What's a small flex you want to share that most people wouldn't know? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. I got myself out of poverty by starting a roadside assistance business while sleeping in the same vehicle I'm working out of. A 2013 Honda Fit with a 3 overall lift, a 4 kilo inverter, a couple free semi-RV batteries from FB Marketplace, a 12V portable fridge, and an induction burner kept me fed. Had to ditch the rear seats and build a plywood deck to fit them out of the way. A bucket and a rag kept me presentable. I wasn't able to shower for over 2 months at one point, but you would have never known. I got lucky with Marmot's end-of-year sale last winter. Their Women's Array sleeping bag kept me warm enough in single-digit temps. I could go on, but I guess my point is that it sucked. I had and have no familial support. My only friend wouldn't even let me fill up water at his place. Only ever let me shower once. But somehow, it was the time of my life. I put my nose to the grindstone, and I set up my routine habits for success. I was always doing something. Working, cleaning, cooking, drumming up more business. Anything and everything to move forward and keep myself busy. I could not let myself sink into the anger and despair that comes so naturally with such situations. Now I have a thriving business, an apartment, and a healthy savings account. I fudge did it. Answer, fudge yeah. Maybe it's just me, but that's friend isn't a friend. Anyone I call a friend knows they have a standing offer. You need a roof, you've got one. World cannot express the amount of respect I have for this. 11 years in EMS hearing every excuse blame game under the sun as to why people with government, funding, free housing, etc. blame anything and anyone while doing nothing to attempt to better their situation. Stay safe. Story 2. I didn't think I would last a day after my only son, 13, lost to leukemia in 2022. Yet here I am, living and breathing. Story 3. I've single-handedly raised $4,000 for the 4th and 5th grade students at the elementary school I teach at over my 2 years of teaching, and none of the students I've donated to know it's me. I've gotten our poor homeless kids backpacks, school supplies, clothes, shoes, groceries, Christmas gifts, paid for their science camp admissions, etc., etc. And every time I arrange it so that I give the money items directly to their parents or the school gives them their items. I kind of love knowing that all my students like me without even knowing much. I help them and their families out. I don't need them to know it's from me for my heart not to be full. I want them to think their parents, the school itself, takes care of them. Not specifically me. I get it paid back in how much they make me laugh and smile. Answer, good on you. My mom's been teaching at the same school for over 40 years. And what's kept her there is the feeling that she's positively impacting these often underprivileged kids whose home lives might not always be completely stable. I couldn't possibly begin to add up all the food, stationery, doing laundry, whatever she's bought done for students over the years. She just wants them to be happy and have the best chance. Teachers like yourself make the world a better place. Story 4. After hitting rock bottom and being $401 Bs, I've lost over the last 4 years over 100 Bs. Put on muscle and made lifestyle changes I never thought I could do, such as not eating fast food at all in 4 years. Also, I hit 260 on bench press, which I never thought I would with my shoulder I injured. Probably doesn't mean much to anyone else, but to myself it's been a massive accomplishment that has now become a habit that I hope to keep with me for the rest of my life. Story 5. 4 other families on my street have me as their emergency pickup for their kids in the event they are super late from commuter traffic, or their kid gets sick at school and they are delayed in picking them up. I don't end up helping them more than once or twice a year. Almost always some kid missed the bus. But it feels good to know that I am part of their village and that their kids can count on my help if they need it. One family parent had a heart attack and needed an emergency stent, and their kids stayed at my house for 4 days. Because I'm always helping families out, their kids felt comfortable staying with us. Story 6. I can flex my pinky toes on their own without moving any of the other toes. That's a small flex, if there ever was one. Story 7. After being unable to read books for almost a decade, due to some brain damage issues with following long sets of words, I discovered this week that I am able to read again. Now on my 4th book in 3 days. Story 8. Was in a band that opened for Tito Jackson once. It was actually amazing to meet his band. David Williams, famous for playing pretty much every guitar track on every MJ album, and Madonna album, was his guitarist. Coolest guy ever. Hung with them until they could get the flat on the Jackson family tour bus fixed. They only played for 40 minutes, and the tickets were like 50 in 2006. The humble brag was David complimented my playing, gave me his cell number, and said to call if I were ever in LA looking for work. Sadly, he passed in 2010. Story 9. Not my flex, but my cat's. She lived to 19 years old. At least she was full grown when we rescued her, and she passed away yesterday. She was the best cat, kind, cuddly, intelligent, pretty, and she kept her youthful spark even in her old age. Story 10. I was homeless for a couple of years in my early 30s, and then managed to retire to a simple, frugal life at 37 by publishing books under a pen name. Story 11. I have been financially independent ever since I got out of school. I was 17 at the time. My folks are well-to-do, but I just like managing things on my own. Haven't taken a single penny from them, got through college and an MBA on my own. Partly with scholarships and partly with a year of work in between. Doing decent now. I don't talk about it to people around me, but it feels good to just know. Story 12. My uncle in the band Little Feat wrote a song about me on their latest release, Sam's Place, and dedicated the album to me and his mother. The album was Grammy nominated. Story 13. I became an alcoholic for a couple years and quit booze without anyone noticing. Was high functioning and managed to quit forever without the downfall. Story 14. I didn't get my first credit card or loan until I was 26. I was a teen mom of 2 and refused to put myself in debt to survive. We lived within our means. Because of this, I was able to become a first-generation homeowner at 30 with a 745 credit score. Even if nobody else is, I'm proud of myself. I worked my jerk off for it. Story 15. I can parallel park in one try, but only when nobody's watching. The second there's an audience, I become legally blind. Story 16. I designed the networks that allows a significant fraction of the generating plants, hydro sites, and a handful of wind solar to be managed centrally to reduce brownouts or worse, blackouts. Story 17. I'm great at gift giving because when I go out with people, I pay attention to the little things they mention they want but don't need, so won't buy it for themselves, and look at the things they show interest in while shopping. Then I get home and note my phone with those items so I can remember for birthdays, Christmas. People think I have this amazing memory when it's really just noting things all year long. Answer. Whenever I find out somebody's birthday, I update it in my address book and it shows on my calendar. Every year on their birthday, I send them a thoughtful, non-generic birthday email. I've been doing this for 25 years. This got me much better mileage before Facebook came along and announced everybody's birthdays and made it easy to send generic greetings. Before then, people were always so amazed that they were important enough for me to remember their birthday. Story 18. My husband took his own life last September on our oldest son's 10th birthday. This summer, I've taken the boys on 2 holidays and they've had a great time. I'm a mess, but the boys are okay. Story 19. In 2022, I established my own charity. Since then, I've done everything myself, from building the website to accounting and volunteering full-time. I donate pretty much all of my money to the charity to help people less fortunate than me. I've helped close to 150 people pull their way out of poverty and into employment while slowly putting myself into it. Not a single friend of mine, nor any person or company I've contacted to try help me has. The 2 cars I bought for the charity were stolen and burned. I got nominated for 2 awards, but as I wasn't a member of the organization that run the awards, I wasn't eligible to win. I'm so proud of what I've done, but it slowly eliminated me financially. Answer. Remember that if you burn up mentally or financially, you can't help other people as much as you would want to. If you take care of yourself, then you will be able to continue to give more to others. And if this doesn't help, maybe this will. I would like to help you, but I don't know you and are probably too far away. So you would be helping me if you could sometimes allow yourself some of the things you regularly give to others. Consider it helping me to take care of another human being who deserves it. You. Story 20. My maternal grandmother had the best one. She would tell people that there were areas dedicated to her family in every city, state, county, even in every country in the world. Her last name was Parks. Story 21. When I'm shopping, I always align my groceries with the barcodes visible for the clerk. Most never even notice. Their life is just 0.05 simpler in that moment. Answer. Writing this makes me feel like a bad person. So first, thank you so much for caring and trying to make life easier. But the reason most don't seem to notice is because it isn't the cashier who needs to see the barcode. It's the scanner that needs to see the barcode. Think of it like this. The cashier is looking down at the product, but the scanner is looking up. So every item you carefully place with the barcode up will then have to flip it over to run it across the scanner. If the person has been doing their job for over a month, they know where the barcode is. We scan thousands of items in a day. It becomes instinctive. You put your right thumb on the front label, run it over the scanner, and bag it. TLDR, I feel like most of the people who do this are only slowing me down. Story 22. Years ago, I became dependent on benzos. I had a prescription, but some oversight on a doctor's part led me to using it far too much for far too long. And eventually I was taking it, not because it was actually helping anymore, but to avoid withdrawals. Once I put two and two together and realized how serious it was and could be, the possibility of rehab came up. I quickly came up with a plan with my therapist and my doctor to wean off safely, and I stuck to it until I was done and then disposed of the remaining pills. Despite temptation and all kinds of reasons to use them, I haven't touched benzos since. Compared to other stories about substances, it seems really small, but I'm still proud of myself, especially as self-discipline is far from being one of my strengths. I was determined to not go any further down that road. Only a few people know. Story 23. I've quietly turned down professional awards in my field, neuroscience academia, because I think they create perverse incentives that are antithetical to the pursuit and dissemination of knowledge. Story 24. The other day, I overheard two people from another department say, "I'm the best mechanic at our facility." I don't have the highest self-esteem, so it was really nice hearing that, and I consider it a flex. Story 25. I quit my job this morning. By the end of lunch, I had 4 offers I didn't even ask for, because I mentioned in small talk into someone in my industry, I might be looking soon. I don't even want a new job yet. Story 26. I'm on track to hit a net worth of $300K before 30. I grew up on food stamps and in Section 8 housing. Story 27. I turned my life around through diet and exercise in my late 50s, now in the shape of my life and feel great. Story 28. I wrote 8 complete computer games for MS-DOS before I finished high school. Those were my own versions of Tetris, Minesweeper, Mastermind, something reminiscent of Invaders, Tank Wars, Lode Runner, Breakout, and an original that has a similar playstyle to Tetris. Most of them in C, using my own homegrown MCGA graphics library. Story 29. I've saved 4 people from drowning in my life. My brother when he was 3 and I was 6, a couple of kids when I teenaged, lifeguarded, and the last when I was an adult and his mom wasn't watching him. Story 30. I went on a date with Janina Gavankar. It's a little weird every time she pops up in a TV show, movie, or video games I'm playing, and I absolutely cannot tell my wife. Story 31. When my neighbor was wrongfully incarcerated for 6 weeks, I went into his mailbox, then quietly paid his electric and water bill, so it would be one less worry for him. Story 32. A year ago today, I had just lost my husband, had nowhere to live with my 3 kids, was jobless and terrified. We moved. I've managed to get a job, get a home, get a vehicle, and just overall get my shoot together. Recently, someone mentioned they thought I'd done so remarkably fast, and it made my whole week. I'm just quietly proud I've done something good for my kids in the face of soul-crushing grief. Story 33. I'm going into university to study cybersecurity, BSc honors this October, despite my sister and mom telling me that I'm special or I'm special needs. In fact, years ago, my sister said you won't amount to much except being a toilet cleaner. My ex also said that I'll be a window cleaner, but I'm too dumb to use proper equipment. Instead, I'd probably use my tongue and called me a window licker for years. I'm hoping to be the first in my family to get a degree and to support my son. I'm going to prove everyone wrong. Story 34. One time when I was walking to work and some kids were throwing snowballs at me, I caught one and threw it back, nailing one of the kids in the face. I was in my late 20s. Story 35. I went through a 3-month recovery program not long ago, still feeling the effects from it and still staying sober after being back home, working, and back to life. Story 36. I am obsessed with dinosaurs. I am a 58-year-old grandma. I have a membership to a museum. A few years ago, me, and 2 grandkids got to camp in museum for the night. We slept right under T-Rex. It was awesome. My life goal growing up was to be a paleontologist. That never happened. Story 37. I quit smoking cold turkey. I was actually in the middle of a cigarette when I made the decision. Put the remaining half out in the ashtray and then left my pack and lighter in the bar when I left. 21 years now. Story 38. I have beaten Bayou Billy on Nintendo. It's a hard game, but not brutally hard. If you beat the tutorials on the menu screen, they give you bonuses in the actual game. This is not common knowledge. The hardest part for me was the second driving stage. If you can get past that, you're good enough to go the rest of the way. Normally, you can't carry weapons between screens, but if you beat Gordon, you can carry his whip into the last fight, which is exceedingly difficult without it. Story 39. I'm missing about an eighth of my brain because of brain surgeries I had when I was a kid, young adult, and I went on to become a pharmacist. Guess I didn't have the forward-thinking part of my brain left. Story 40. I'm pretty good at guessing what song is playing by the first second, as long as I've heard it before. Story 41. In The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, I can gather all of the Gold Skull teletokens without using a walkthrough. Story 42. Got my bachelor's a little over a year ago. Couldn't find a job with my degree and started drowning my problems depression in adult beverage. Got blood work done and was scared shitless by the results. Realizing that I am doing damage to my body and shortening what little time I have left on this planet. I've been sober off adult beverage since March 16th this year. I have a very strict diet and started working out nearly every day. Only down 35 miles, but I can see certain muscles have grown, which likely contributes to the lack of weight loss. I also just signed up to be a teacher at a local school district. Probably not a flex for many people, but sometimes you gotta look yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, I did that. Story 43. My wife and I planted 17,000 indigenous trees on an 8-hectare, 20-acre property. I'm 85 now. The trees are thriving. I'd be happy if they were my only legacy. Story 44. A YouTuber who died. Dad picked me out of a crowd at a gaming convention while I was in cosplay of his child's character and invited me to lunch and chatted with me for like an hour. Story 45. 1, only person in my family with a degree. 2, only person in my family with 2 degrees. 3, mortgage on 1.3 mil property, almost paid off at 40 years old. Story 46. I successfully had a petting zoo in my room when I was in high school, complete with a tortoise, hedgehog, betta fish, dog, gerbil, hermit crabs, and snake. It was a fun time. Answer. On a similar note, I have had virtually every normal pet over my life. The couple I didn't I got for my son, so we shared them. The only noteworthy absence is snake. I made up for it by having a half-dozen lizards over my lifetime, ranging from small to extra large. The most fun? A ferret and an eel. The ferret was the happiest animal I've ever been around, bar none. Her life was one giant romp. The eel was as big as a forearm and ate earthworms like spaghetti from my fingers. I've been incredibly lucky. It's been a blast. Story 47. I'm about an hour away from moving into my first home that I built from the ground up with my father, mother, and brothers. Story 48. Back in the 90s, I got the opportunity to lead the first race to post on Belmont Day on horseback. It was incredible to get to ride in front of the crowds, although my horse disliked them. Story 49. In working on promotional material for a massive film coming out soon, legit creating cassette mixtapes of the soundtrack that will be given away ATM. Story 50. I went from living in my car and jobless to earning 6 figures. It's not a huge wage, but nobody knows at my current job just how down and out I was. Story 51. Not something I talk about because I don't seek kudos for doing good human things, but I will mention it here. I never graduated college, but dabbled in tech, business, etc. Felt like a failure when I never finished and mostly worked sales jobs I disliked. I always liked teaching, but was told reaching didn't pay, but always had patience for training. I had a job as a sales rep, and they switched our software, which I picked up quickly, so they asked me to train a few branches, and I enjoyed it. About 2 years later, I changed jobs to a place who also used that software, whom also asked me to train people how to use it. I eventually figured there had to be a career in it, and I quickly discovered that corporate training didn't pay much, and for that specific software, the jobs required like masters in education and tons of experience and didn't have. So I started volunteering for nonprofits to help them teach their folks to help me get experience in exchange for a reference. One day, one of my clients asked me to help them configure the software with some customization, and I couldn't figure it out but was determined. So I went online looking for training, but it was super expensive. 3,000 instructor-led classes or so. So I posted into local message boards looking for some guidance. After a few weeks, a local guy replied back. We exchanged info and he helped mentor me. He asked for nothing in return other than to pay it forward. He connected me to several people in the local community that could help me learn and maybe find a job, free resources to learn, etc. I was able to help that nonprofit with their technical need and get experience. Within a year, I had pivoted into a more technical career path instead of just training and was looking to get out of my sales career. I finally landed that first job and it was a rocket ship ever since. I went from making an average of $60K a year to $180, $200K a year within less than 10 years, starting my own business and helping another one as a partner owner. Now for the big flex that I'm most proud of. Ever since that guy showed me kindness to help me out, I've paid it forward. I've mentored dozens of people trying to do what I did and helped them with either small problems or big ones. I've spent tons and tons of my time helping people figure out my career path, train them to help get their first job or certification, or connecting them with people I know that can further help them or can hire them. I even started my own local volunteer group for this software, just so people can learn and build a network. It got so popular and time-consuming, I had to step down from running it and hand it off to 2 people to run. IF's also provided financial help as well. I've been able to give back to the charities I support, provide my kids a life that I was never able to have growing up poor, and help individuals privately in my circles, like my wife's friend who lost her husband suddenly, had no income and 2 kids and about to be evicted. We paid her rent quietly for 2 months and got her groceries so she had a cushion to find a job and care for her family. Anyway, yeah, I don't really flex that publicly at all, and all my friends know is I have a tech job and do a little better financially. But I don't buy flashy things, really, and wear the same t-shirts I've worn for 20 years so no one really notices. But wanted to come flex a bit that I was able to turn my life around and give back, pulling others up with me. Story 52. My adult kids love me. I had an extremely abusive dad. He passed over a year ago. I had no emotional response at all. Not a flex on anyone else but him. I did better, you know. Yeah, my kids are awesome. Story 53. My mental health was so bad in my 20s, I didn't leave the house for 6 months, was self-harming and attempting to take my life, and suffering with psychosis and convinced magpies were put to get me. Now, I've been married 13 years, have 2 kids, have a job, and have run my town's pride events single-handled for 2 years. Took a break for 25. Story 54. I can wake up at any time I need without an alarm. I just have to say to myself before I go to sleep, wake up at X time, and I will wake up at that time. It's been a savior, especially when I had to get up at 2 a.m. for a flight and my partner's alarm didn't go off. I woke at 2 thinking I must have got the time wrong because his alarm hadn't gone off. Checked my phone and it was 2 a.m. I also self-recovered from a crippling eat disorder. I've not had a relapse in 10 years. Story 55. I'm an okay basketball player, but really good at shooting free throws. I'm currently trying to get 100 in a row. I consistently get 50, but I've yet to get 100. 99 once, 98 a few times, and lots of times in the 80s. Story 56. In the 2010s, I worked for a Fortune 100 company that paid over $2 million for an outside firm to develop software for a very specific and high-value internal task. After 2 years of development, the software never worked properly. I wrote an Excel macro in a single day that worked perfectly and is still being used 15 years later. I like to think they still use it because it is awesome, but in actuality, it's probably because it's password protected and only I know the password. I did this purposely because I got 0 recognition or even a simple attaboy and was actually let go a year later, entirely due to internal politics. My siblings still works for them, so I'm holding the password as a simple eliminate switch in case they get screwed over by the company. They delete 1 line of code on their way out and throw them back to square one and watch their stock tank. Story 57. This year I did my first 10K and rode my bike 200 miles on a bikepacking trip. I have cerebral palsy and thought at one point I might not be able to walk. I wish my grandparents could see me. Story 58. I very carefully pick what I care about and let very little else matter to me at all, yet fully retain the ability to seem caring when people are talking to me. My facial expressions go away when I'm alone, but I seriously doubt I'm a sociopath because the things I do care about tend to be either certain relationships with particular humans or even just incredibly meaningful experiences. I feel a lot, I just aim it really well. Story 59. I participated as a scrub nurse for my state's first triple organ transplant on the procurement side. Lungs, spleen, and liver donated to the same patient with CF. It's been 3 years, and the donor story runs through my head and makes me tear up every time. Story 60. I was the first deaf child to go to mainstream school in my state. I fought for deaf children to have the same access to education as their hearing peers. Story 61. Just about 1 week nicotine-free. Barely told anybody in my real life because I didn't want the pressure of not screwing it up. Story 62. Today marks 4 weeks since my last cigarette. I still vape, but eventually I want to knock that on the head too. Smoked for 20 years. Story 63. You can call me and press random numbers on your phone, and I can tell you what numbers you've pressed. Story 64. Small flex. I dislike chess, and especially poker, which all my friends love, but I'm pretty darn good at mahjong. Probably not compared to actual seasoned mahjong players or Chinese players, so thus, small flex. Not small flex. I can do a backflip in high heels. Story 65. Here it is mid-August, and I have Christmas wrapping paper pre-positioned at my front door. Granted, I've never put it away from last season, but most folks who see it assume I'm already preparing for December. Story 66. I've done a lot of things in my life, but one that often comes to mind if that myself and my partner have never had one argument in front of our kids. Story 67. I parallel park a 40-foot bus. I can also park a 48-foot trailer between two other trailers on the first try. Story 68. I was a three-sport athlete in high school and won the most athletic superlative for my senior yearbook. Now I'm just a slightly overweight engineer who loves to drink beer. Story 69. I'm a published board game designer. I did internships at some well-known U.S. board game companies and worked on a large number of games, 3 of which are still in publication in one form or another today, over 20 years later. But I'm most proud of the 2 licensed games I was the sole designer for. I won't name them because I am credited as the designer, and I wish to remain anonymous. Of course, life hit me hard, and I'm now an unemployed middle manager who can't even afford a board game. But I'm still proud of what I did. Story 70. Since the start of 2025, I can count the amount of times I've had takeout on one hand. In 2024, I could count the amount I would have in a week on both hands. Story 71. I saved an older woman from being mugged, and I lost 42 LBs in the last 2 months. Now I have to buy new jeans. Story 72. While living in an African country as an American, I resuscitated a 2-year-old who had fallen into a pool and was on the bottom for an unknown amount of time when she was finally pulled out. She wasn't breathing and had no heartbeat. Because of a previous job, I was required to take the Red Cross CPR class, and I was able to use that knowledge to perform CPR and successfully revive her. Story 73. I am a 48-year-old woman, but I drive a forklift into trailers to load them for shipping. I also drive a $10,000 LB reach truck, stand-up forklift, and forks literally reach out to put pallets up 31 feet. It's something half the people at work can do, but I'm really good at it. I've trained others to do it. I'm so cool. Story 74. Back when small forums used to be popular on the internet, there was this guy who was a complete menace. He would mess with people until they rage quit the conversation. He got kicked off most forums, yet he and I both ended up on the same small forum. Long story short, I eventually gave this guy a taste of his own medicine and got him to rage quit the whole forum. It was quite the feat, and a few people who knew him were very impressed. But it sucked because then I got kicked off the forum. LOL. Story 75. I got the Platinum Trophy for the OG Borderlands on PS3 back in like 2011, including the Mad Moxie's Underdome achievements. That was such a meanie. I also unlocked every attachment for every DMR on BF4. Story 76. I'm in a different field now, but my brother and I had an original work on Comedy Central. That was cool. It was in the early days of YouTube, and this show played comedic shorts from the internet. We made $500. We've gone viral several times after that, and sadly never made any real money, despite hundreds of thousands of views on numerous videos. This was in 2009 or so, when those were bigger numbers. Story 77. I know a lot about sunglasses. It's become something between a passion and an obsession over the years. And I always have 30 or so pairs that cycle through my collection. I especially love early 1900s sunglasses. The way the molten glass was spun instead of floated like it is now left slight imperfections that make everything picturesque. Story 78. I recently argued for a patient of mine, which resulted in her getting around $30,000 in total, spread out over almost a year, to which she has the right, but just because one person set the wrong tick mark somewhere, she wasn't getting it. Story 79. Malcolm Young from AC/DC gave me a private piano recital in his home. It's a core memory as I am a huge AC/DC fan. I also got to bang the Hell's Bell. Story 80. I've lost 140 hisarobi and not many people in my new life. Moved state, got engaged, became a mother. Know the old me, so could never guess what I've gone through. It's a cool before and after photo show and tell. Story 81. I used to be part of some groups in my local indie scene. Before I turned 20, I was mainly a bassist but also a drummer. I don't do it anymore. Story 82. I can memorize relatively long strings of digits, say around 20, without much effort. Kind of useful for phone numbers sometimes and for absolutely nothing else. Since I'm not a spy, I don't own a safe, and I've never been contacted by aliens. Story 83. I'm the youngest in my family in our entire history to retire. I worked hard for 30 years to do it. Half of my family doesn't even know I've retired because I don't want to deal with the envy and asking for money. Story 84. I was my faculty's Student of the Year twice at my college, along with 5 other subject awards. I won the gold medal for academics in my graduating year. Story 85. I'm in a financial position where I don't have to think about grocery prices. I just buy one thing I want and don't have to feel bad about it. I'm still on the 9 to 5 grind though. Story 86. I have gotten remarkably good at guessing my friend's blood sugar before he tests it. I am usually within 0.3 points of being correct. Story 87. I'm insanely good at complaining. Hear me out, LOL. Over the years, I've helped family members with housing, health, used to work as a disabled advocate, and have done the same for myself. I'm unfailingly polite. I don't believe in treating others with disrespect. Am excellent at researching legislation, etc., and very good at writing succinct and pointed letters, reports that leave the receiver no wiggle room. These days, I'm a little middle-aged disabled woman, and I can't currently work, so that's what people see. But don't mess with me and mine, or you'll see something very different. Story 88. I can recite 100 digits of pi, learned it as a teenager for a challenge, and still remember it at 33. Story 89. Joined my first hackathon, wasn't sure if I'd submit anything working. Did not win, but submitted a working prototype. Very proud. Story 90. I wrote a fanfic that's in the top 5 most popular in the fandom on AO3. Kind of want to go back and edit it. I've gotten a lot better since I originally posted it. Story 91. My pinky fingers are bent inward slightly, about 9, making piano playing a lot easier. Also gave me an advantage playing the recorder in elementary school, no. Story 92. When I can't find my favorite old albums on YouTube or YouTube Music, I upload them myself if I still have the CDs. Story 93. When I was working at retail, no matter who asked me or what it was for, I was buying everything from those fundraisers there. Kids was doing and having their parents bring them to work. I would easily spend over $1,000 every year on it. It just made me feel good knowing that I am helping them out. Story 94. I can do quite a lot of cool billiard trick shots. For example, I can do a bunch of six-stop shots. Story 95. Got my diploma, although I was really sick taking the exams and had no voice for the oral exam. Later in my career, I took some classes for a year to get another degree. It was a year in which I went through a breakup, got a promotion with more responsibility, worked 120, had class every 3rd night of the week, went out partying and got tipsy almost every night, had countless ONS, trying to forget the pressure, the worst year of my young life, but still managed to get my degree. Not proud of this year, but proud I got through it and didn't succumb to alcoholism. Story 96. 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with MS during my first year of teaching high school. I am now 43 years old, starting my 21st year teaching, and I think I'm pretty darn good at my job. Story 97. My dad passed in March, my boyfriend passed in May. I am still on time to graduate with my PhD, even from taking off a few months to handle things. Another thing is that I am handling all of my dad's affairs and probate myself, despite being only 26. I am somehow functional enough to get what needs to be done. Story 98. I'm on a 500-day streak in Duolingo. I recently started reading The Wizard of Oz in Spanish, and I can actually understand what's happening. Story 99. I've donated about 170 gallons of breast milk to medically fragile NICU babies. With my first daughter, I donated about 50 gallons over 2 years and realized I could have donated more. With my second daughter, I already knew about the milk donation process and had a relationship with the milk bank, so I could donate more. I pumped for 3 more years. My goal was to double my first donation, and I was able to surpass that. Story 100. I can casually straighten hanging things like artwork, TVs, etc. without using a level. It often gets checked by some doubting person who hauls out a level to verify, and it is always correct. Waiting rooms, doctor's offices, friends' houses, public spaces. No one is safe from my surreptitious alignment. Story 101. I'm the best at nothing, not one thing, but I suck at nothing. I'm kinda good or very good at everything. Story 102. I farted on a plane, and it was so bad that I managed to crop dust the entire back half of the plane. There were people 5 to 6 rows away from me who were gagging, and it lingered for so long that I thought I might have shoot my pants. I had a bad case of swamp jerk because the plane was so darn hot. so I wasn't sure. I had to wait until someone else went to the washroom because I didn't want to be the first person to go to the washroom after dropping a bomb like that. I thought that everyone was going to know it was me if I did. Eventually, someone went to the washroom, and then I went shortly after. Turns out it was just Swamp Jerk, and I was worried for nothing. Story 1, Story 103. I hit my supervisor with a forklift, and he was a big man. Well, it was just me and him on the clock. I had to pick him up with the forklift to get him up. He grabbed the forks with his hands, and I pressed up on the lever to get him on his feet. I got suspended for 3 days, but not fired. Sorry, Dave. Story 104. Stay at your parents from 18 to 20. Work your jerk off on any job that pays the minimum salary. Save every penny and invest all of it in an ETF, SP500, that reinvests the dividends. Then have a normal life like you would have from 20 to 65 and never freaking touch your freaking investment, no matter freaking what happens in this freaking world or in your freaking life. Then enjoy your 20 million when you retire at 65 or 10 million if you retire at 60. Story 105. I was one of the top 10 scholars of my year in my country and the prize paid for my bachelor's degree. Story 106. In 4 warriors 8 months sober from self-harm. It sounds big, but to me it's a minor thing in my life. It doesn't feel all that special as I've made so much more out of my life these days. It's just something I want to share once in a while, but you can imagine why I don't tell people though. Story 107. I volunteered at a kid's cancer ward. A youngster was going to die by the next day. I made him both laugh and smile. Story 108. 3 other grad students, and I wrote the world's first distributed HTTP web server for a class project in the early 90s. We were playing with this new thing called the World Wide Web from CERN and figured that someday there might be hundreds of clients trying to reach the same server at the same time. So we extended the open source HTTPD server code to run across parallel, coordinated servers with a single URL top-level address. We had the idea right, but had the scale wrong by a few orders of magnitude. We open sourced it, so never made any money directly from it, but I am confident it was the first because the publication we made about it became the center of numerous 9-figure patent lawsuits over the following 20 years. Basically, companies had incorrectly been awarded patents for similar ideas after this system was published. When the lawsuits started flying, I'd get calls from various law firms asking for details about that system to establish that the patent in question had been incorrectly awarded because there was previously published prior art. As far as I know, this always stood up in court as the first example of the technique. That's my little contribution to building the interwebs. Story 109. I was hit by a bus and recovered from a traumatic brain injury when I was 15, in a coma for 8 nights. They told my family to expect the worst, and I didn't know who my own family were for a couple of days after waking up, was talking a lot of nonsense. Then it all came back, in the will to fight and relearn, alongside my memories and remembrance of who I was set in. Story 110. After years of depression, anxiety, and tragic end ideation attempt, I am the happiest I have ever been. My life is comfortable, I am married to an amazing woman, my job is stress-free, and I am, well, happy. Story 111. I know I got hugely lucky for this, but I convinced myself that debt would eat up more in interest than I would earn in savings. I kept like $1,500 in the bank for weekly things and small emergencies. Figured if I suddenly needed more, I could get another line of credit. I overpaid heavily on my and my wife's student loans, car payments, and mortgage. We are totally debt-free by 35 with multiple years' worth of our current salaries and savings investments. It's a huge weight off my mind, given the current economic climate, to know I only have utilities and taxes to keep my house. Story 112. Played Satisfactory for a month straight, got enough points to get my golden nut within 20 minutes of sending up the final batch in the space elevator. Never played since. Story 113. I make the best pancakes, American style. This is after years of recipe tweaks and personal preferences added in. Story 114. I filled 16 blue books once in uni for a comparative politics course final. I had a painful dent in my index fingertip for like a day LOL. Got a passing grip that pencil when you're a complete psycho and you have to aggressively compete with everyone at everything. The next time I had a course with that professor, he announced to the class of a couple hundred students that he graded on a curve and that I was their competition as he pointed at me over his podium. I sank into my chair. Humble flex. Story 115. Graphology. I know some rudimentary graphology, and knowing a person I can even deduce their handwriting. Story 116. So much I learned to walk again after breaking my back and being unable to do anything, even sit for 2 years. Shout out to my dad for taking me in and covering my expenses. I'm not the mom to my kids that mine was to me. Horrid, awful person she was. My kids are safe and happy and so annoying because they feel so loved that they aren't scared and are comfortable being loud, present, and asking every question they can think of. That's pretty much winning the jackpot. I finally made a career switch after hating my previous career for more than half the time I worked in it. Just jumped and really neato burrito sometimes. Story 117. I was once interviewed by an early career, back then, literary agent who now represents New York Times best-selling authors and household names. She didn't end up representing me, but she told me she'd consider doing so if I focused on writing nonfiction, a memoir. I have had an odd life. I never took her up on the offer. I also have a standing offer of a solo record deal from a guy who owns a label and co-wrote a top 20 single. I haven't taken up that offer yet either. If you're reading this and thinking, you've partied too hard, some great opportunities, you lazy dopamine-chasing fudge, yes, I have. I think there's still time, but not a lot. Story 118. When you take a deep breath and make your exhale a little longer than your inhale, your body signals to your brain that you're relaxed. A small but powerful trick for reducing stress. Story 119. I got my life back after 20 years of misdiagnosis, mistreatment, and medical negligence around my mental health. Oh, and I lost 65 kilos on my own without surgery or substances. Not hating on those who do. I'm just proud of myself. Story 120. I'm great at catching things that are falling. My most recent memorable catch was my sunglasses I was keeping on the top of my head. For some reason, they fell backwards, and I just extended my right hand backwards behind my waist to catch the glasses midair. Luckily, a colleague was with me to appreciate the move. DD. Also, I never get a jump scare from a loud noise. At most, I raise my eyebrows. Story 121. I wore a brand new pair of socks every day for years. Nothing freshies all the time used to be a cheap habit. Story 122. I've received a Bronze Star during my military service. I'm not regretful for my time in the military. However, that fact haunts me. My original medal is buried with my grandfather since he is the only person I've really digested and talked over that information with. It's been 4 years since his passing. That part of my life will forever be unknown toward my family and especially my children. And now, just a quiet family man. Story 123. I have really good facial recognition. I see someone once, and I just remember them. Unfortunately, I'm terrible with names and remembering who people actually are. Story 124. I likely saved the life of a high school student because of a news story I did. I did a story about a teacher and coach at a North Carolina high school who gave presentations to students about bullying and where he shared his experiences with bullying. He explained how he was a bully growing up and after becoming a teacher, became disabled following an accident. His own students began to bully him, a man in his mid to late 40s after the accident, because of his disability. And so these presentations were his way to ensure the safety and well-being of his students. A week after the story airs, he sends an email to the newsroom saying highlighting his story may have very well saved a student's life. People always ask me why I got into journalism, and I can always point to that as a unique way I was able to have a positive impact on someone. Story 125. It's been a bit, but I got my high school equivalency paper after only 6 weeks and a 12-hour test, on no food and with a fever. I'm still quiet proud of myself, especially since at the time, it was the hardest the test was. Story 126. I won a cooking competition during my apprenticeship and received the title Zauberlehrling, which translates to the sorcerer's apprentice. Story 127. Been surviving off strategic gambling without a job for about 3 years. Also, my highest craps roll was 40 rolls. Story 128. A character in a semi-niche video game was named after me. I was friends with a developer on the game. They didn't have a name for the character, and my friend put my name in as a placeholder. Nobody could apparently come up with a better name, so now I'm in a video game. Story 129. Successfully healed my binge eating disorder on my own. Not sure if anyone suspected anything serious, but it was really impacting my quality of life. And I still am, way too embarrassed to talk about it. I still get a little too hungry now and then, but I never let it reach the same intensity from before. Currently learning to manage it with proper nutrition and meal prepping, as well as managing my controlling tendencies towards food. Story 130. I just passed the WSET Level 3 in wines exam. I hope to become a sommelier. This test was so hard and most people fail on their first try. I'm ecstatic and so proud of myself. Story 131. I have 2015 vision. 20 FT away is as clear to me as a 15 FT away for people with 20/20. I can read road signs way farther away than anyone I'm ever in the car with. I can read the tiniest print of anyone I know. My flex is that I am adorable in glasses, but no one will ever know because I don't need them. I won't wear fake ones because I feel bad for anyone who got teased growing up and feel like they deserve to be extra cool now that wearing glasses is so in style. Story 132. During a dark time, I tried to self-delete, failed. The next day, I went out to see a fish, contemplating stuff, etc. Ended up pulling 4 kids out of rip current. I swam over 200 meters back to the beach, towing these kiddos. It's been over 20 years, and live is great. Story 133. I got nominated for an award at work for outstanding service. It's one of the bigger awards they give at my work. Pretty proud, as when I first started here, I was a pretty mediocre employee. But now that I'm in the department I'm in, I kind of found my niche. Story 134. Former students have told me that my class is the reason they're still alive. I don't know what I did, but I'm so grateful that they're still here. Story 135. I can perfectly balance a spoon on my nose while reciting the alphabet backwards. It's a talent that really comes in handy at dinner parties. Story 136. In my 7th decade, I've managed to recover from an acquired brain injury after a serious accident, and am living and working with very altered perceptions. So well, most people don't realize I'm hearing colors and seeing sound, which is a real mindfuck. Story 137. An article I wrote for my Podunk High School newspaper has been a citation on the They Might Be Giants Wikipedia page for like 25 years. Story 138. I've been on TV, in a movie, on the radio, and in a national newspaper. I'm a pretty minor scholar, but I get interviewed often to explain things to the general public. I'm pretty well-spoken and decently photogenic. Story 139. Wife and I became millionaires at some point over this past year, and we didn't even realize it. We are in our late 30s, combined income of about $150K, retirement accounts worth a little over $500K, HSA about $40K, and other non-retirement accounts in cash about $120K. We bought a rental condo about 3 years ago, and between the equity in that and our primary, that bumps us up over the 1M mark. We have 2 kids, and this will be our first year in 8 years since they were born with 0 daycare payments. So that will be a big raise. Neither one of us inherited money. We both got out of college debt-free with good jobs. This allowed her to buy a house before we met, and me to buy a house before we met. We sold her house and made a nice chunk to pay for her car. Bother our vehicles are nearly 10-year-old Toyotas. The house I bought 11 years ago has a $1,000 mortgage, so it's super easy to build equity. We aren't super frugal at all, but we also don't wildly spend money. Biggest advice I can give is 1, get though college debt-free so you can 2, max out your retirement, 3, live within your means, and 4, buy a house 10 years ago. Story 140. I may have saved a person's life or contributed to it, may be more accurate. I noticed something while doing an MRI brain scan on an outpatient, called a radiologist to look at it, and they told me to send him directly to the hospital when he finished the test. By the time he arrived, an ER doc was waiting to admit him, and neurosurgery was prepped. They operated either that night or the next day. For the medically inclined that might be interested, I noticed a dangerous amount of midline shift from an undiagnosed metastatic tumor from his stage 4 cancer. Story 141. Survived DLBCL stage 4, developed bipolar due to chemosteroids after long manic psychotic episodes. In an attempt to off myself, I'm here. I've survived 3 years of hell and continue to recover. I'm starting an outpatient program on Monday, and I'm feeling hopeful. Story 142. I have bowled 17 strikes in a row, split between 2 games. Unfortunately, still haven't bowled a 300 though. Story 143. I've been buying a goat a month for Plan International for 20-ish years now. They always called me asking me to sign up when I was drinking in my 20s, and I figured fudge it, it's less than a bar tab. They're a pretty decent charity. Check them out. Story 144. Learned how to swim and went through 6 weeks of full-time training in order to become a flight attendant. Had a massive fear of flying, but got over it within the first couple months. Just played it cool all day and never told anyone. Now, I absolutely love my job, and I can share my story and really connect with nervous passengers. Story 145. I started as a skinny young man in elementary school. I started to hit the gym at the age of 14. 2 years later, and my body has started to gain a solid 10 pounds of muscle. To me, it's a big achievement, but when I tell my friends about it, they're not even that impressed. They said that I still somewhat look the same as I was years ago in elementary. It's probably because I still look somewhat skinny with the clothes on, like I have to roll up my sleeves and flex my arm to show my progress. Another reason why it sucks to be lean. Story 146. There's something about changing the center on the tailstock of my Hyundai L700 LMA that makes it really fudge hard to do. Took my boss like 30 minutes last time. Earlier this week, I did it by myself for the first time. Took me like 120 seconds and I feel like a fudge wizard. Nobody was there to see it. Story 147. I'm in the top 0.3 of my job role according to the manufacturer. Got first place in 2023 and top 3 this year. I'll find out if I am first, second, or third on the all-expenses-paid trip on a private yacht I'm going on in November this year. Was ineligible to compete in 2024 due to getting first place the year prior. Other than that, I'm just some dad with 2 crazy little boys. Story 148. During a bout of underemployment some years ago, I spent a lot of time kind of mentoring this neighborhood kid. He had a rough life, born disabled, insulin pump from birth, criminal parents, being raised by a single old grandma, barely making it. She even had to give up her higher-paying job and do a lower-wage church job as finding a job that cared about her need to deal with him medically and go to deal with stuff, etc. It was like a 2-year run or so during some formative years, 12 to 14, and he didn't otherwise have any male influences, etc. His mom in another state had apparently kind of got her life together, and she took the kids back. So he went off into a new life. I knew he was doing pretty good for a bit before he dropped off time and space of my knowing anything. I like to think I helped anyway. Story 149. I worked solo in a from-scratch country club members-only kitchen on a 300 cover night. Old white folks. I luckily had a liver and onions, special going. No returns, no serious wait times longer than 15 minutes. My 2 other cooks called in. The exec chef was off dealing with a parent's passing. I was the sous chef. Thankfully, my cold kitchen person was there, so I didn't have to worry about salads and desserts. The GM came walking in during the rush and asked if I needed him to help. No, thank you. I was in the zone. Story 150. When I was 30-ish years old, neighborhood kids would knock on our door, and when my wife answered, they would ask if I can come out and play. I had a basketball hoop set up in the front driveway, even though they had carte blanche access to it anytime they wanted. Story 151. I learned chess at 21 years old and took me only 1 year to reach 2300 rating, starting with 1000 in classical format, lichess, entering the top 100 on that site in that format. It's quite superficial, and it's not my most meaningful achievement, but it is one almost nobody knows. May sound silly, but people who play chess and know how hard it is will appreciate it. Story 152. There are times I have superhero reflexes. The other day, I was making hot dogs for my wife and one rolled off the place and I speared it with the knife I was using to cut cheese before it hit the floor. Story 153. I have 3 stories on an NSFW website, roughly 28.6K words in total. Combined 38.1K views with ratings of 4.29, 4.6, and 4.61 out of 5. Story 154. It took me 8 weeks, but I've trained for a 5K. Technically, with my plan, I run 5K tomorrow, but I'm confident. 36th with fibromyalgia. Story 155. I started a new job in July. I designed my own email signature, and now everyone is asking me if I can do the same design for theirs. Even the president of the company. Story 156. When I was a senior in high school, my digital art class had a contest where everyone could spend 2 weeks designing our new school logo. I was playing around on game sites for the majority of that time. With about 2 days left to go, I completed my design and won the contest LOL. Story 157. I once found and explored a cave with my brother that I am reasonably certain no one else has ever explored, before or since. Oh, this was not a small cave, though the entry hole was too small for our dad to fit through. We came back hours later to find the sun setting and Dad in the car with the light on, looking at a map trying to find the closest emergency phone, Nullarbor, South Australia. Story 158. I've been walking about 14,000 steps a day on average for months. I think that's pretty good, but I'm really not sure. The past day was 24,116, which I hope helps keep up my average since I apparently didn't collect any data one day this week. Story 159. In preparing to leave my 7-year-long relationship next month after over a year of thinking it over. I'm ready to grow and be the me I'm meant to be, and he's been inhibiting my growth since I got together with him. He refuses to grow up, and I'm ready to. Story 160. I couldn't find people who wanted to make music with me, so I wrote and recorded new lyrics to 2 albums from my favorite band. They're on Bandcamp for free, since it's not my music, obviously, but very few people have listened to them, and fewer still cared, but I'm still proud of them. Story 161. I learned just enough Python to code a roguelike DD game, kind of like one of those VHS DVD-based DD-style board games. There doesn't seem to be as much of an audience for it as I thought there would be, but I still think it's pretty neat. Story 162. I can roll a joint in under a minute. I dress and act in a way that makes people very surprised that I smoke. Story 163. I am partially responsible for Pepakura being used to make cosplay armor, while I back on the old Mjolnir armor forms. Story 164. I can learn music by ear extremely quickly, even on instruments I don't normally play. I don't live a life where that's a particularly relevant skill, but sometimes I hear a song that sounds like it'd be fun to play, and if it's guitar or bass, I can play along with the recording like 20 minutes later. If it's piano, maybe an hour if it's not too complicated. Story 165. Hardly, I never tell people, and the few that knew don't mention it, or didn't know how serious it was. But I went from extremely tragic end and dealing with PTSD diagnosed at 14 to now at 19 having 6 official PL state records and 20 if I extrapolated to higher weight and age classes than what I competed in 300K NW from investing, thanks ASOS, and a few months out from a first author paper, new ML model I made for a prof, and another second author paper, also a provisional patent, last week actually. The only thing that would make surviving worth it is being exceptional, physically, financially, and mentally. I don't think I'll ever be truly happy, but way happier now than I was and didn't think I'd live anywhere near this long. Story 166. I am the most certified person in my country and neighboring countries to perform a certain task, and yet the job market doesn't care. Story 167. I found a scratch spot on my cat that makes her leg go crazy like a dog. I have never seen that on a cat, especially not this one. Just discovered it, and we've had her since she could leave her mom. She's 6 now. You think you know a cat. Story 168. I can tell when a conversation's about to get awkward before it actually does. It's like my brain preloads the cringe and gives me time to dodge. Story 169. I moved to Germany from the US at 18 and completed a BSc in computer science in German, best decision ever, although it was traumatizing at times. Story 170. My muscle mass alone disqualifies me for my BMI. I need to lose 13 lbs of muscle just to be normal weight. Story 171. I can go years without horse riding and still be a decent rider when I get back to it. As in walk, trot, conturno, stirrups jumping. I used to ride as a kid and always thought I was terrible, but can't have been too bad if I still got my skills. Story 172. I can tell when food is about to burn just by smell before there's even any smoke. It's not like it's a cooking skill, it's a sense of smell for disaster. Like a superpower, but only in my kitchen. Story 173. I am part of the first state school pair, non-paying school in England, to win a national school championship in Eton Fives, about as posh a sport as you think. Story 174. I can actually play songs with my cheeks. For anyone who doesn't know, you just open your mouth so that when you tap your cheeks, you get a hollow sound. And I've been able to play some basic tunes like Baby Shark or Jingle Bells. Story 175. Through my job, I have directly prevented dozens of bad products from going to market. I work in market research where we directly test products of all kinds. Some designs, flavors, ingredients, operations, etc. of products in their prototype phases are wildly bad. Companies don't always take our suggestions, or they do, but their solutions are also bad. However, we do get wins for consumers fairly often. Story 176. I can manipulate gravity, drop the sky, make clones of myself out of gravity, and interact remotely. I'll be able to fly soon. Story 177. In the U.S. Army, I used to repair the multiple launch rocket system. I can legit say I've worked on rocket launchers. Story 178. I have finally got to a point where I actually like myself and am taking active steps to make my life enjoyable and comfortable. The feeling of wanting to take care of myself is new to me. My mental health is the best it has ever been, and I am also putting things in place for the days where I might not feel so great. Story 179. I'm better than most people at almost anything. For this reason, I have tons of hobbies and try out new things all the time. Still, I'm the best at nothing. So like, semi-good all round. To me, it is not a big flex, but I realized how arrogant it sounds to other people, so I always keep it to myself when people are talking about doing so-and-so. Story 180. It's really only a small flex cause, stuff like space internships and making so much at a young age is nothing LMFIO. But yeah, I'm 20-0, and I went to an ayahuasca San Pedro retreat in Spain. Anyone could do that. But I mean, my God, I gotta say, in that whole week and in those ceremonies, I genuinely felt the human limit pinnacle of joy, community, love, happiness, and self-worth. It was so grand and saturated with meaning and felt positive transformation. I'd like to say it was a humbling experience, though this comment would suggest otherwise. But I do feel like I need this, as the integration and afterglow is a really lonely time. Story 181. Whenever I go to the shopping center and I see an employee pushing the collected trolleys, I give them a hand and push those along with her until they enter inside, every time. Story 182. I'm good at doing things generally. If I pick up a hobby, it feels like it comes naturally. Sewing, knitting, painting, drawing, violin, running, golf, carving, writing, poetry, sculpting. Any group project or solo project for school always was the best. Story 183. Having an internal compass. Even on a cloudy day, I know which direction I'm heading and constant situational awareness of cardinal points. Story 184. Women compliment me every day, looks and personality-wise, and I'm not even a 610. Under 6 feet, not even 120 lace of bees soaking wet. Story 185. I have boxing gloves, one signed by GSP and the other by Tom Aspinall. Not a lot of people I know are really into UFC, though. Story 186. I am a severely dyslexic high school dropout who held a 4-year contract with NASA for a skill I taught myself. Story 187. I was born with 4 fingers on each hand, missing the middle finger, and have trained and played basketball, not on a pro level though, for like 5 to 6 years. Story 188. I raised over 1,000 for my local children's hospital in an even called Goat a Roast. I sold BBQ plates or brisket, pulled lamb, ribs, and salad. I was the 3rd highest in my country and only beaten by a couple restaurants. Serving up about 40 takeaway boxes when everyone came at the same time was hectic, so was smoking about 70 pounds of meat as an absolute novice. Story 189. Been growing wasabi for almost 10 years. Going to focus on it becoming my primary revenue stream moving forward. Story 190. There was a small pond next to the motel we stayed at when I was 8 or 10. I threw a small bobber out no more than 3 or 4 feet of fat from shore with a half of worm on the hook. I caught a monster largemouth. I screamed for my dad to come, and we were so excited to get a look at it. We let him go. No picture, nothing. Found out afterwards the motel had a 50 prize for biggest catch. We would have easily broke the record. No biggie though. That memory is so much fun. Story 191. My ex-roommate, who became a great friend of mine, along with her husband, named me as their heir as long as I take care of their daughter if something were to happen to them. I helped save the marriage of some friends of mine, and then they had a kid. This kid is named after me. Story 192. I can look at spices and know exactly how they will taste together just by smelling them if I'm unfamiliar with them. I can eyeball liquid measurements exactly by ounce. I know for sure because a boss who disliked me checked and then was pissed. I can hold paper money in my hand and tell by weight how much is there as long as it's all the same denomination 100 of the time. Those are all acquired skills. The truly weird one. You can stand behind my back and hold even a small refrigerator magnet in either hand, and I can feel which hand you're holding it. Big magnets make me feel so weird I don't enjoy touching them. My autistic husband was so fascinated, I found out that I can also accurately tell which batteries have juice and which are stronger. He brought out his beloved box of used batteries and tested them with a voltmeter to verify. Story 193. People that meet me for the first time comment that I could be a model, etc. I am a 62 female, halfway decent looking now, but spent the first half of my life over 250 lbs overweight and hating myself. I've lost all the weight and feel great, but struggled for the longest time with people being kind to me. Story 194. Sometimes the greatest rewards aren't in recognition, but in the quiet knowledge that you made a difference. Story 195. I had a tryout for a professional roller hockey team once. I didn't make it, but I'm still pretty psyched that I was even invited. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you'd like to see more content like this, you might be interested to know that I've created another channel with a similar theme, especially for those of you who enjoy what I do. I'll leave a link in the description, and I hope to see you there. Take care.